Hi dear children, welcome to the next session on the chapter How do Organisms Reproduce. In this module, we are going to learn about sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Dear children, if you look into fruits like guava, papaya, mango, apple, all these have seeds. And if you take the seeds and you sow it in the soil, it will produce a new plant. So the seeds produces a new plant. So what is the most important part? It is the seed. It is a seed because it gives rise to a new plant. So the process of reproduction in plants involves the formation of this seed. But the development of a new plant from the seed is called as germination. So germination is a process by which the seed produces a new plant. So dear children, never confuse reproduction with germination. So such plants in which the seeds are enclosed inside a fruit, gamete producing parts are present inside a flower, are called as angiosperms, which you had studied in class 9. So let us see about the sexual reproduction which takes place in flowering plants. In flowering plants, the flower is the reproductive organ. The flower is the reproductive organ. Now let us look into the structure of a flower. In this flower, we can see the green colored part. What is it called as? It is called as the sepal. And this colored part is called as the petal. The importance of sepal is it gives protection and it also helps in photosynthesis. And the importance of the petal. What does a petal have? It's having fragrance. It is very colored. And its importance is to attract the insects for pollination that we'll study in detail. And the other two parts, they are the male reproductive part called as a stamen and the female reproductive part called as the pistil. These two parts are called as the essential parts of a flower. Is it clear? In some flowers, such as cucurbits, papaya, we can see that the flowers have either the male reproductive structure or they have the female reproductive structure. And such flowers are called as unisexual flowers. So unisexual, only one sex. Unisexual plants are flowers are those flowers which have either the male reproductive structure or the female reproductive structure. They have either the stamen or they have either the pistil. Is it clear? And such flowers are called as unisexual flowers. Whereas other flowers like hibiscus, mustard, both the male reproductive structure and the female reproductive structure are present in a single flower. And such flowers are called as bisexual flowers. So there are two types of flowers, unisexual flowers and bisexual flowers. Now let us learn in detail about the reproductive organs. The male reproductive organ is called as a stamen. It's called as a stamen. Each stamen has two parts. These two parts is a slender stalk-like structure called as the filament. And at the tip of the filament, there is a bilobed structure. And this bilobed structure is called as the anther. And this anther has a yellow powdered structures. And this yellow powdered structures is called as the pollen grains. These pollen grains have or they carry the male germ cell or the male gamete. So the importance of the male reproductive structure is to produce the male gamete. So let's learn about the female reproductive structure, which is called as the pistil. Each pistil, it has three main parts. The stigma, which is the tip of the pistil. Then it is having a slender stalk-like structure, a slender tube-like structure, which is called as the style, and the base is swollen part, and the swollen part is called as the ovary. So three parts for the female reproductive structure, that is pistil, that is from the base, ovary, then style, and the stigma. The stigma is quite sticky. It is quite sticky. And it is a platform where the pollen grains will come and land. And why it is sticky? So that it can hold on the pollen grains. And the style is a part which helps to join, which connects the stigma to the ovary. The swollen structure is called as the ovary, and inside it is the part which bears the ovule. So inside the ovary there is an ovule. And what is the importance of the ovule? It is a structure which has the female germ cell called as the egg or the ovum. So the ovule is a structure which has the female gamete called as the ovum or the egg. The process of formation of seeds involves two processes. The first process is called as pollination and the second process is called as fertilization. Now let us learn about pollination. The male gamete which is present inside the pollen grain has to be transferred to the female gamete which is present inside the ovule. So this transfer of the male gamete or the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma is called as pollination. And it is done with the help of agents like water, wind, or insects, birds. All these are either biotic factors or abiotic factors which help in the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma, that is a female reproductive part, and this is called as pollination. There are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. If the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower is taking place, it is called as self-pollination. It's called as self-pollination when there is a transfer of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma within the same flower is called as self-pollination. Whereas the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower is called as cross-pollination. So the two types of pollination are self-pollination and cross-pollination. So as a result of pollination, the pollen grains comes and lands on the surface of the stigma. So stigma is the platform which receives the pollen grains. And this pollen grain has the male gamete which has to reach the female gamete which is present inside the ovule, which is at the base of the pistil. And for this, there is a process which is called as germination of the pollen. The pollen germinates to produce a very thin tube which passes down the style and reaches the ovary, and once it reaches the ovary, it enters into the ovule. The male gamete which is present inside the pollen grains travels down the style and reaches into the ovule which is having the female gamete. And then the male gamete and the female gamete fuses together, and this process is called as fertilization. So the two processes, pollination and fertilization, is over. So yet we have not reached the formation of seeds. This fertilization results in a single cell called as zygote. The zygote divides repeatedly to form a structure called as embryo, and this embryo is the future plant. This embryo is the future plant, and this development of embryo from the zygote takes place inside the ovule, and there is a large amount of post-fertilization changes. The first change is, as we told, it is a formation of the embryo from the zygote by repeated cell division, and then the ovule wall starts to become tough and thick and gets converted to form the seed coat. It gets converted to form the seed coat. And where is the seed present? As I told, in angiosperms, it is well protected inside the fruit. And where is the ovule present? It is present inside the ovary. So ovary converts into the fruit. So the ovary converts into the fruit. The ovule converts into the seed. The ovary wall becomes the fruit wall. The ovule wall becomes the seed wall. And inside the seed, the embryo is well protected, which is a future plant. When all these changes are taking place, the other parts of the flower, what are other parts? The sepal, the petals, the stamen, style, and stigma. They may either shrivel off or they may fall off. So these are the post-fertilization changes. And inside the seed, the embryo is well protected. And what's the function of the seed? To produce the new plant. And what is a new plant? What is the future plant called as? It is called as the embryo. So this embryo has two parts. You can look at the upper part is called as the plumule and the bottom part is called as the radicle. The plumule gives rise to the future shoot and the radicle gives rise to the future root. So the parts of the embryo are the plumule and the radicle, which is the future shoot and future root. And the other two structures, they are called as the cotyledons. You can see two cotyledons. If they are having two cotyledons, they are called as dicotyledons. And if they are having only one cotyledon, they are called as monocotyledons. In this picture, we can see two cotyledons. That means it is a dicot seed. So they what's the function of these cotyledons? It gives nutrition. It's having abundant food reserve so that it can give nutrition to the future plant, or the developing plant obtains nutrition from these cotyledons, which is having abundant food reserves. Dear children, in this module, we learnt about the sexual reproduction which takes place in the flowering plant. Hope all the concept is clear for you. Thank you.